Hello, everyone. Welcome to a classroom at the School of Management. My name is Stuart DeQ. I'll be the host for today's webinar. I'm the Executive Director of the Yale Center for Business and the Environment and a joint degree alum, graduated in 2011. Today, we're going to get a great opportunity to dig into the experience of 3 joint degrees who are all at different stages of their journey, their path here. So Caroline's a first year. She's going to be able to talk about what it looks like from 6 weeks in when you're just kind of taking it all in and figuring out what this place looks like and how you navigate it. Jonathan, over on the end there, is in his second year, having done 1 year at the School of Forestry and now over in his year in the core curriculum at School of Management along with Caroline. And then Alex is in the 3rd year, so finishing up, tying a bow on it, kind of doing all the wonderful things that one does in their 3rd year of the joint degree program. And so we're going to get to hear and talk a little bit about all their perspectives. Before we do that, though, I just want to give a little context to the program, kind of why does Yale have a joint degree program? What does it look like? What is this place known for? So Yale was the first place to establish a school of the environment. A school of forestry at a time at the turn of the century where everyone was really concerned about the management of natural resources for future generations. And so the folks here brought over the latest forest science from Germany and established that first school. From that history and legacy, Yale has been responsible for a lot of firsts. So the joint degree program, founded just a bit after the School of Management started in the late 70s due to students who were kind of academic entrepreneurs and pioneers. People just walked to different parts of campus and said, this school at Yale is founded on the idea of leaders for business and society. The School of Forestry and Environmental Studies is founded on the principle of managing resources for future generations. The DNA of these two is very similar. Let's connect and create a program. And so the university responded due to that interest and created the first joint degree program of its kind. So then when the joint degree program could continue to grow and interest around here had continued to grow, the Center for Business and the Environment was established at a point where folks around campus, again, alumni, students, and others rallied together and said, we need a point on campus, a rallying point for everyone who's interested in these activities to come together. So the Yale Center for Business and the Environment was established then in 2006, and that kind of history and legacy has continued to grow in other programs. Now you have executive MBA programs in sustainability where students with kind of 13 years or more experience who are getting a core MBA curriculum with a focus in sustainability. We, Alex and Jonathan, are both a part of this, but we've launched a new online program in financing and deploying clean energy. There's kind of the DNA and the kind of expertise of these schools continues to combine and create a lot of new wonderful activities and programs. And that is really manifested most specifically in this joint degree program. It's the largest 3-year program of its kind at Yale, where students get 2 degrees in 3 years rather than 4. The MBA from the School of Management and one of 4 degrees in environmental science or management from the School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. And the students here get to pick their way through it. One of the things that, and I'll get into the kind of alumni who've come out, but that people have been known for here is, there's a lot of kind of really self-motivated, intrinsically motivated people who think about how they want to take full advantage of this place, and they can start at either the School of Management or the School of Forestry when they're accepted. So we'll talk about the different pathways through, but about 50% of the joint degrees on campus come in, accepted at both schools, and then choose where they start. Either choose to start at FES or choose to start at FES SOM. Jonathan chose to start at FES. Caroline chose to start at SOM. We could talk about the reasons, decisions why. Alex chose to start at SOM as well. Then about 50% of folks in the first year, students who are at the School of Forestry or students who are at the School of Management, kind of look around, come to the events, listen, talk to the joint degrees on campus, think about the other school in depth, and then decide this is a community I really want to join. So then about 50% of that community joins after their first year, which is also something we can talk to if that's of interest in the Q&A portion. You have 2 internships during that period of time. You go through both orientations at the School of Management and the School of Forestry. You really spend 1 year at each school in the first 2 years, and then you split that third year. There is flexibility in courses you can take in those first and second years as well. More limited flexibility when you're in the core curriculum at the School of Management, and a little bit more when you're in the core curriculum at the School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. We can come back to this chart as well in the Q&A portion, which if you'll look on the screen, please make sure throughout this, anytime, submit questions, and we'll get to those right at the end of the presentation. We'll leave a good amount of time for that. So one of the things when you kind of look at this chart is you get the diploma, you look at the little cap, and you're like, where do you end up? Well, as I talked about in the series of firsts before, the people who've come through have really defined fields at the nexus of business and the environment. So you've got everyone from people who are leading impact investment efforts or have led corporate partnerships programs between EDF and McDonald's. You've got people who wrote the first tax equity flip for solar, who are leading the largest public power authorities in the United States, who are kind of creating the field of conservation finance at the Nature Conservancy, who are developing circular economy partnerships and industry partnerships globally through the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, to folks who are, have won the Democratic nomination for mayor in New Haven and are potentially going to run the city here, to folks who are leading environmental NGOs, and so you've got this kind of really interesting group of rare birds who've come through the place and who've done pretty remarkable things throughout their careers. And some, like Daniel Gross, which I'm sure Alex will talk about, teach here now, come back and teaches the largest elective between the School of Management and the School of Forestry called Renewable Energy Project Finance. You've got Radha Kupali, who's an alumni expert who comes back and offers her time to students. You've got Namrita Kapoor, who's an executive fellow at the Yale Center for Business and the Environment. So all these people are also folks that you in your time here will get direct exposure to as well. So this is the kind of process through the what does it look like when you come out, and now we'll get into what does it look like while you're here. So the joint degree community and the experience of the students. So Alex, will you kick us off here? I mean, you're in your third year.
Crazy.
You've gone through 2 internships. You've had time at both schools. What does the experience look like for you? Where did you come from? Kind of what have you done while you're here? And what's a story that you would share that sort of illustrates your time at Yale?
Right, yeah, thanks. So kind of to start off, it's been an incredible experience, and I know that's kind of my bias, but I've really enjoyed it, being able to kind of bend the historically rigid relationship between business and the environment is kind of why I wanted to come here. So prior to Yale, I was in the United States Army as an engineer, and kind of wanted to shift my focus on fighting climate change. And when you start looking around at other schools or opportunities, so I knew I wanted to pivot, but this is kind of where it just made so much sense to kind of go for both degrees and really try to build out that skill set and that kind of a time for me to truly pivot. And it's been an incredible experience. It was more than what I thought. I had high expectations coming in, and it's exceeded them in every way. So also, I have kind of a unique experience as a father of 2 small kids, and that's definitely challenging, but it's been a great time for my family and I to kind of to grow and to develop at that, while the kids are at that age, and as well as myself kind of intellectually and getting into the academics and all that Yale has to offer. What I've done here, so as you mentioned, been here 3 years. My first internship was at JP Morgan, working on their energy strategy. The second internship this last summer, I was at Excel Energy, large regulated utility in the Midwest, where I was able to kind of take some of the hard finance skills and work on their CFO group. And it's been, I've absolutely loved it. Kind of a story, as you alluded to, the project finance class that's become a really popular class. So you'll see on Monday afternoons a lot of kind of a herd of students from the law school, from the business school, from the divinity school, from all across Yale, kind of this herd of students walking towards the forestry school to take a financial modeling class, which I think really speaks to kind of what Yale is, and that you have so many opportunities at all of these different schools, as you know, the flexible kind of campus where you're able to go to all these different schools and take these incredible classes, but how, you know, hard concepts are kind of taught, you know, in the forestry school it's been awesome.
That's great. Thank you, Alex. And Jonathan, so what does your kind of experience look like? You're a year out from being in Alex's shoes. Like, you've just gone from the School of Forestry to the School of Management. You're in the core curriculum in the first year. Like, what are the kind of what are you experiencing about the two schools? The kind of curriculum that you've been engaged in, the summer internship that you had, and kind of what would you say is a story that illustrates your experience here?
Sure. So like Alex, I'm doing a bit of a career transition. I'd worked in foreign policy before this. So to me, both sides, the sustainability side, and I'm focused on energy at FES, and also certainly the business and investment side, which are a big interest, but they're both pretty new to me. So I'm learning a lot and kind of drinking from a fire hose at the moment. I think one of the things that surprised me a bit going to the second year is how much overlap there is. So I took a couple of econ classes last year at forestry, where we dove into a bit more of how microeconomics applies in environmental regulation, in policy decisions, but we're doing some econ this year, and the focus is a bit different, but a lot of what I learned last year has been incredibly relevant. And the same thing, I took the Renewable Energy Project Finance course last year, and it's known as one of the best financial modeling classes at Yale, and that's been incredibly valuable for someone who had not done a lot in Excel as I've kind of gone into the core curriculum. So the way that the joint degree can really build on itself, even though the two schools have quite different focuses in some ways, has been really incredible and valuable. As far as the story, the first one that comes to mind was last year when I was recruiting for internships, and I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. I sort of jumped into this field of energy with some ideas, but not a ton of background. And I think when you think of grad school, you think a lot about learning from classes, from professors. I would say equally valuable is learning from classmates and peers, both at FES and at SOM. And so for me, my internship strategy last year was both working with CDO, but also very much talking to classmates who had already been working for several years in exactly the field I wanted to go into. And I talked to about 5 or 6 people who'd done really interesting experience, learned a lot about the energy space just from talking to them about their work in the field, and then ended up talking to a second-year student, Katie Siegner, who had interned at a renewable energy developer. It's a very small company, 14 people, but doing some of the most innovative work. And they don't publicize any internships. I mean, they're tiny. They just don't have the HR staff to really do this. And there's no way I would have found out about that internship if it weren't for the network at FES. They just don't publicly advertise. It was an amazing experience. It was an incredible experience. It was exactly what I wanted for that summer. And I learned a huge amount. And it just wouldn't have happened without being at FES and SOM.
Cool. Great. And Caroline, so Jonathan mentioned kind of drinking from the fire hose. You're in the closest position to anyone who's online, likely, in that, like, you're 6 weeks in. What does it look like to come back into an academic environment? Kind of what are you experiencing? Why did you choose to start at the School of Management? And you were accepted into both programs. Like, why did that decision work for you? And kind of what's a story that you feel illustrates sort of your experience here thus far?
Yeah. So the very first part of that question was, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm starting at SOM,
Yep.
and I decided to start here instead of at the forestry school. I actually was planning for a long time to start at the forestry school, and sort of last minute switched over to starting at SOM. I sort of had a random reason for choosing SOM. I think both are super valuable. I'd sort of heard from previous students that most people started at SOM, and for me, I really wanted to integrate into this community and give myself the best chance of doing that. So I thought, okay, like, I'll start sort of with the herd, and I'll be a part of SOM first. Also, it's pretty well known that, like, the core at SOM, I think, is a lot more structured and sort of intense than at FES, so I sort of wanted to get that experience first and then have sort of a less structured second 2 years. Mm-hmm. So far, it has been a lot, for sure, getting back into the academic mindset. I think that I was not necessarily preparing myself quite as much mentally as maybe I should have been for, like, the workload. It is Pretty intense. It's very manageable, I would say, but there are a lot of things that are going on in the beginning with regard to trying to meet up with second years, like Jonathan was saying, to like gather all this information from your classmates and to go to various employer events and, you know, start to make friends. So it's been pretty intense, but also just a lot of fun with a great community. Everyone is pretty much going through what you're going through. Like the SOM students, even people who are not joint degrees are very, you know, they have a lot going on right now. And then the joint degree community itself is just so welcoming that it's been really amazing to just talk to those people who know the different schools. Yeah, I would say a story. I think your first year, so I'm starting at SOM, but I really made an effort to try to meet FES students as well and like be involved in some of those clubs. So I would say over the weekend, there was a harvest festival at the Yale Myers Forest. That's one of the school forests. I went to the harvest festival with one of my friends from SOM, and there I saw several joint degree friends, and I met a lot of new people from FES, and it was just an awesome like mixing of people at the different schools. And then yesterday morning I went on an oak walk run by some people at FES, and so I think, yeah, regardless of sort of where you start, you can integrate into both communities quickly, and that's really been fun for me.
Cool. And where were you coming from before, and what kind of the why of what made you choose this place?
Yeah, so after graduating college, I studied environmental econ in undergrad. I worked first at a mountain lion conservation organization in the Bay Area, Field Conservation Fund, and I concentrated there largely on education efforts. And then I went to a wildlife rehab center based up in rural Oregon. I helped them with their rehabbing as an intern, and I saw that they kept talking about this new facility they were going to build, but they had no money to do it. So I sort of started to help them as an intern and then transition that into a job with them in development. And I felt like I was able to help them a lot in that role, but that there was still so much that I wanted to know and learn, and that like a lot of these nonprofits and other organizations could really use these business practices to actually help them fulfill their mission. And I thought that the joint degree here, obviously, I wanted to gain business skills, but I also really wanted to learn more about the pressing environmental issues and exactly what I could dive into to make the most difference. I'm also just super excited for FES courses. Like, there's no way I would have let myself just apply to SOM.
Great. Yeah, I know. And you're getting into a bunch of issues, the kind of culture of the place, the resources, just even the school forests is something that people may not be familiar with, where orientations run. Kind of, Alex, what would you say in terms of the community or the kind of opportunities here that you feel are sort of unique about the experience at Yale, SOM, and FES?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, you guys have kind of mentioned it. So I think whatever schools you're applying to, a huge value proposition is kind of the network that you gain by attending that school. I think what I've really appreciated through the joint degree program is, and it sounds maybe a little corny, but it's not necessarily so you have the network, you have the Yale network, which is obviously incredible, we all know that, but the joint degree community is as much of a family as you honestly can be, and that's really powerful. You've kind of mentioned something, in terms of just whether it's job recruiting or just trying to, find a couch to sleep on, those sort of things can happen in, a broad Yale network, but the joint degree community, I slept on in New York City, I, reached out to somebody, didn't really know them, I got to sleep on their couch. Like, that is kind of valuable in that one kind of a situation, but also the same things happened, and that's how I ended up getting an internship as well. So reaching out to alumni, whether it's, to sleep on their couch or to get a job, that family is extremely powerful. Of course, the Yale network is also great, but that kind of small joint degree community is truly a family, and that's what, I'm just kind of honored to be a part of.
Cool. And one thing I also want to pick up, Jonathan, Caroline mentioned kind of starting at SOM. You chose to start at FES. Like, what was the decision there? Was it the kind of wanting to take these classes to sort of, like Caroline mentioned, like, I just can't wait to think about the systems thinking and like the stuff that's going on at FES? Like, what was it that when you were accepted at both schools influenced your decision?
I think the first thing I'd say is I think you can't, I stressed out about it a little bit, I don't know about Caroline, you can't make a wrong decision. I think either way is going to work out, and there are pros and cons to each of them in a variety of ways. Sort of 6 of one, half dozen of another in some ways. For me, it was 2 things. First, I don't have a quantitative background. I'm feeling very dumb right now in that I was very proud in college of the fact I didn't take a single math class or econ class while all my friends are struggling through, econ or whatever. Retrospect, probably not a great decision. So I really wanted to use the year to sort of build up a bit of a quantitative background before diving into what is a pretty intense fall in particular with the core. And so far, I think that's really paid off. That I felt challenged this fall in the core, but not overwhelmed in the way I think I might have been otherwise. I think I would have survived, but I do think I'm getting a lot more out of it than I would have coming in just SOM. So that's number one. And then number 2, I thought there'd be real value for someone kind of transitioning into this new field of energy and sustainability in grounding what I learn at SOM, kind of on the business strategy side, markets, investment, with a focus on energy in particular and sustainability, so that as I'm learning business strategy, as I'm learning finance and how markets work, in my mind, the wheels are kind of turning in terms of, okay, what does this mean for renewable energy markets, for example? And I think you can do it both ways. You can certainly derive value at FES if you start at SOM, knowing a bit of the finance stuff as well, for example. But for me, it just made a bit more sense in my context.
Cool. When the 3 of you kind of reflect on the experience of sort of choosing the joint degree, one question that always comes up, and because of Yale being very permeable, you can take classes everywhere. Like Alex was describing, like you see students moving in clumps from one part of campus to the other. You can take classes in drama or architecture or forestry or divinity when you're at the School of Management. Why specifically choose the joint degree? Like what is it about that 3rd year that you're hoping for? What kind of is the community that you're engaging in, the 3 networks that you're involved in, from SOM to the School of Forestry to the joint degree program? Like, what is it for you about the joint degree that makes it distinct from sort of saying, I'm going to take one degree and add in all these other elements?
Yeah, I can start with that. So kind of as Caroline and Jonathan have talked about, deciding which school to start, a lot of the anxiety kind of around that. Now being in the 3rd year, it's hard to look, you can't go back in time, but all of that anxiety, like you said, you can't really go wrong. And the value of that 3rd year, now I'm actually starting able to see it, not just in time, on campus, but that second internship really allows you kind of the space to find out what do you actually want to do or what do you not want to do. So I think that 3rd year is really valuable. And, this year, I can honestly say I absolutely love every single class I take, where other, the previous 2 years, like there are some classes that are really hard or you don't really feel, you don't have maybe as much interest in, but that 3rd year, you're able to kind of really dive into the skills that you have a gap in or something you just want to learn more about. Yeah, so I think time is extremely valuable in that 3rd year, and now I'm just able to see that being in the 3rd year, and it's hard to see that when you're in the fall 1 of year 1. So I think,
yeah.
I'd really echo that. I mean, there is an opportunity cost of the 3rd year, and I think the joint degree isn't something you have to do if you want to work in this space. Both schools offer a fair amount of flexibility for electives, so you can get, if your goal is just to learn a little bit about energy and you want to be in finance, you can get that in the 2-year MBA and vice versa with FES. But I think in addition, or as well as the opportunity cost, there's a real opportunity value. And like Alex is saying, I worked for a while before coming here. I worked about 10 years, which is a little non-traditional. I'm a bit older. So I have a long resume. 50% of my resume, 12 months in, is completely different. I mean, 1 internship, 2 jobs on campus last year, research, coursework taken. It looks completely different, and I'm much more credible when I'm applying to jobs and opportunities in the energy space than I was 12 months ago. And that's going to be even more so next year as I'm going into the 3rd year and coming out of it. So I think the ability to kind of recreate yourself and take that time to really get depth in a field you want is incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Great. And, Caroline, Alex has talked about the way he used 2 internships already. Jonathan kind of described the one that he got. Like, when you're thinking about projecting out, like, okay, and different pathways and scenarios, like, how would I reinvent myself over 2 summers? Like, what would kind of be a path? Like, how would you be thinking about it right now? Like, just off the top of your head.
Yeah, no, that's a big question. I think for me, and what a lot of joint degrees seem to do, is I really want to do 2 totally different things over the summers, and 2 things that are very different than what I've done before. So I said that I worked at a couple small conservation-related nonprofits. I'm super interested in conservation still, but I think that I might try working at a larger organization, which I really haven't done much in the past, and sort of see how I feel there. At SOM, there are a lot of consulting resources, so I've definitely considered for one of the summers trying nonprofit consulting or environmental consulting, because that is something here that they really help prepare you for and sounds pretty interesting to me. So I think I'll probably see what I'm most excited about this first summer, and then that will really help me figure out what I want to do next summer. But I'm very excited for the opportunity to just really switch it up.
Cool. Great. One of the other elements that people kind of think about is the impact that they can have over the 3 years here on campus, and like how can they influence things or shape the institution or change it in different ways. A question that always comes up and from folks online is like, well, how does like the social impact or the societal impact get expressed in coursework or activities or things that you can be able to contribute to? Where have you seen it, come out in the classes that you had, either are the ones in the first 6 weeks or over a year and a half, or in your coursework, or the kinds of projects that you've taken on, or the coursework that you've taken on, and the kind of things that you might want to, like, where does this focus, which is in both mission statements of the schools, actually play out in the day-to-day? Whoever would like to take it.
You want
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I honestly was very surprised and impressed that, again, I've only been at the business school so far, but how much that and society component of the business school mission is evident in the classes, in people's conversations. Pretty much every club or class started the first day with the business school management mission on the board. Let's not forget about this and society piece. I think when people comment in class, there's a lot of pushback to purely profit-driven initiatives, and people are really careful to think about greater society. So for example, I majored in environmental econ, like I said, in undergrad. When I took these pure econ classes, we just talked about econ theory. And here I found in our econ class that the professors will say, this is what the econ theory says, but let's think about these limitations that, when we're talking about consumer surplus decreasing for producers, whatever. The point is...
Deep in the core. You're
right.
Deep in the core right now.
People really consider society and the greater good of what they're doing in their job searches, in classes. Yeah, I've been happy.
I'd echo that, and I think sometimes what I actually love is you can get a bit of a clash, right? You get someone coming from a very pure sort of finance investment background who's thinking mostly in terms of profit and market opportunity, and they're bringing one perspective. And then you get sort of me or classmates from FES who are wait a moment, what about these externalities or whatever? And I actually think having just one of those 2 sides can be a little dangerous. That I think if you're purely thinking from one perspective and not thinking about the social impact or consequences, I think you're missing half the battle and a lot of the reason why we're here. You're also probably not learning how to speak to regulators and policymakers and think about your public relations strategy. So there's kind of a practical side to it as well. And similarly, if like me, you're coming from kind of a mission-driven nonprofit government background, being able to make your case, make the business case for why people should invest in sustainability or renewable energy is really important. I mean, these are the investors investing in new technologies, investing in your ideas. And kind of being able to bridge that gap is really powerful. And I think the combination exists at both schools, and certainly when you're doing the joint degree, it really exists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I can just kind of add on to it. There were as Caroline mentioned, like pretty much every class I've taken, they somehow find a way to incorporate the society piece, which even in the classes where I didn't even think it was possible, they were so technical, such technical classes. So I can think, speculation and hedging in financial markets is a really quantitative class, but somehow we ended up doing case studies on how climate change can be hedged. And Intro to R is a computer science, programming course. All the data we use involves kind of societal impact. The financial modeling class is looking at how can you deploy these types of concepts in rural Africa. So I think throughout every single class I've taken at every school, whether forestry, school management, even an undergrad class that I took, it really flows through. And that's really why I came here as well.
Cool. Yeah, in terms of the, that pathway through and kind of you're experiencing all these things, you're seeing all these different opportunities, you've got your synapses firing in different classes. Like, when you all are navigating this place, did you have a dot on the horizon coming out, or do you have one, like in terms of like the industry sector focus, the place you want to go work, or are you kind of opening doors and letting parts of the education determine the path? Like when people are kind of sitting there thinking about like, how do I take most advantage of this? Like, was it fuzzy when you were in their shoes? When did it become clear? And what were some of the things that helped, that come into focus?
Yeah, so I can kind of speak at my, so as I mentioned, having a family is, it's a different perspective, right? Like it can feel kind of restrictive in a sense that I'm not probably going to be a consultant, like the family lifestyle, so it feels kind of restrictive in that sense, but it also is extremely helpful that it helps me narrow my search down to what do I actually want to do in terms, professionally, what type of impact do I want to have, but also what type of work-life balance am I looking to achieve. And you can really kind of tighten that group, because when you get here, you are overwhelmed by the resources and the opportunities and all the organizations coming to recruit on campus, and that can be so overwhelming. So as much as you can, I would recommend trying to do a little soul searching, and I know I at least come up with a couple things that you don't want to do. If you come here open to anything and everything, which is great, but you will be exhausted. So that's
Yeah, no, and I think your kind of question about the fuzzy side has really been my experience too. And it's not just one point; it's sort of a series of points, kind of a series of checkpoints on that road. I came in not having worked in the energy space, but having worked on some energy and climate policy issues, kind of at a large international level. And I found that I really wanted to transition and kind of dive deeper into that space. So I had some idea of what that was and the vague target down the road, but no real clear idea of what roles that meant, exactly what industry, exactly what side of the space I wanted to be on. And kind of building off what Alex said, talking to classmates, learning what you don't want to do, what you do want to do, the trade-offs you're interested in and willing to make. And I remember for me, one moment where it got a bit clearer was sitting in a class on electric utilities last year, and we were reading through like 100, 200, 300-page utility documents, and a lot of classmates were like, oh, this is so boring. I was loving it. I was like, I totally enjoyed it. Like, I found it fascinating. It was like a page turner for me. And that moment of like, I kind of thought I wanted to work in energy, but I wasn't sure. I was looking at a variety of different things in the broader sustainability environmental space, and realizing that I just actually really enjoyed it was a great validating point, and then allowed me to kind of dive even deeper into the utility space. And part of what I did this summer was reading through hundreds of page, integrated resource plans for utilities across the Midwest.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of seeing what you enjoy, seeing what you don't enjoy, and then kind of continuing that point. And every time you hit a part where you make a decision, following and you hit another decision point 2 months down the road, and kind of seeing where it takes you is fun.
Which is a pretty good example of like the intrinsically motivated and slightly geeky culture of the joint degree, in that someone will say, I really enjoyed reading 250 pages of legal documents on energy policy. And Caroline, is it still fuzzy? Are you happy with it being fuzzy? Like, where are you kind of thinking about the sector area focus for yourself?
Yeah, I just want to say I'm not one of those people who would enjoy reading 300 pages, so if you are not, that's okay. But yeah, it definitely was fuzzy coming in. Definitely still is. I've only been here for, 6 weeks? I was very proud of myself. A couple weeks ago, I closed my first door I thought that I was really going to be interested in this one thing. I, went to an information session and I realized like, okay, this is not something that I want to do. I'm just not going to apply. And that was a little tough for me, but I'm definitely getting there. I think the classes that I'm going to take and just all of these like very casual career talks that we've been going to have really been helpful in sort of narrowing down what I want to do. One thing that I wanted to mention about the 2 internships, I think a lot of the students who only have one internship tend to choose an internship where they like think that they want to get a job afterward, but having the 2 internships really allows you, I think, to play around a little bit more and discover what it is that you want to go into. So I'm very excited for that, but I think figuring out what classes I'm most excited about is going to be big for me too.
Cool. Yeah. And Caroline's mentioning there's a whole series where students present their internship presentations at the beginning of the year from SOM and FES to kind of give that same, perspective that Jonathan was looking for. But, oh, you worked at a niche place of 14 people, and that's really interesting. Or you worked at Google, or you worked at Pepsi, or you were working at Excel. And so everyone can get a sense of that landscape very early on from the students themselves, which is something that the Center for Business Environment helps host with the students on campus. One of the things, we talked a bit about classes, but like, what are the things that you can do? There's a huge, probably larger component of your life here is even the stuff you do outside of class. But what's the stuff that you've built? What are the things that you participated in? Writing opportunities, engagements, research assistantships for Alex and Jonathan are the things that you guys have. How have you taken advantage of that time?
Yeah, so the project finance class that keeps coming up. Very popular class on campus, and kind of an initiative through CBA was to take a lot of the great kind of the resources in terms of faculty and curriculum and other resources through the 2 schools and make that an online certificate, which is incredible for many reasons, but kind of hits home to me. Like there are a lot of veterans that weren't able to or decided not to get out of the military, and so they don't have the ability to take 3 years off and come to Yale and get on campus and take all, have the experience we have. So it's kind of taking a lot of the great resources and everything associated with these classes and making it available to them, which is, I think, really powerful. We're running our first kind of cohort through, which is really exciting and a lot of learning. So I think it'll only continue to get better, but so far I think it's been a huge success. And but yeah, it's been a ton of work, and but I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you know, I worked on the same project last year that Alex just mentioned, and for me it was huge. It was probably one of the most valuable things I did last year. I was effectively being paid to learn exactly what I wanted to learn. So I had a little bit of background in energy policy, renewable energy policy, but there was still a lot I wanted to discover, and I ended up working with 2 or 3 of the top experts in that field who were at Yale to build the course curriculum and actually start filming interviews with them and interviews with outside stakeholders and companies. And it was an incredible process to be involved in. I focused last year on jobs as my extracurricular activity. So at one point in the spring, I was working 4 different jobs, which is probably not what I'd recommend in the future, but they all had value, and I learned a huge amount out of each one of them. I started working for my internship a few months before the summer began, so towards the end, I'd already begun working for the developer that I ended up spending the summer with. And I just got a huge amount out of each one of those, so it's really valuable. This year, I'm thinking a bit less in terms of jobs and a bit more in terms of clubs. So SOM in particular has really strong clubs specific to the fields you want to recruit in. So a finance club if you want to work in investment banking, consulting club. And these are really the tracks that get you the internship, that get you the job in those fields. In my case, I'm looking at MINT, the MBA, Impact Investing, Network, and Training. I'm really interested in the impact investing space. And friends who have done internships and jobs in that field have said MINT is probably the single best training you can do, even beyond any coursework at SOM or FES.
Yep. And the Yale team's done pretty well in that, having won the competition the last 2 years globally. One thing
a little bit of pressure for us this year.
Yeah, no pressure, not at all. One thing that folks, and Caroline, you weren't that far removed from this, but like, how do you prepare for an experience like this? What before, like in the next year, if people are applying right now and they're kind of considering coming, like what would you recommend or say, like, here's some stuff to do to get your mind kind of moving in this direction, or skills that you could work on prior to coming back to school? And then, Alex and Jonathan, if you all have anything to add on, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I think Alex mentioned like doing some sort of soul searching before you come. That's definitely a very good idea, because when you get here, you don't want to be going to every single event and every single like recruiter's dinner or whatever it is. So sort of figuring out, just like narrowing yourself down a little bit would definitely be helpful. I think, and this could just be me, but it's been a couple years since I've like done econ or done accounting, like just kind of re-flipping through my old notes, or like doing a little Khan Academy online, you know, supply demand, like just because they are like in the core, we do have half semester classes. So it moves very quickly. I would say just like, you don't want your academics to be like preventing you from doing other things. And yeah, I mean, do research, figure out what it is exactly that you want to do here. Make sure that you know who to reach out to, like with CBATE, figure out how to like get on both sets of mailing lists for the different schools, so you're not behind it all when you get here. And that is what I have to say.
Great. That's wonderful. You got anything to add?
Yeah, I think kind of on the soul searching piece, I think the application process is pretty grueling, and it's a lot of time and energy. And I think, kind of looking back, use that time and energy while you're writing those essays to do that, kind of pour your heart out in those essays. And that's a great kind of way of, so what you end up talking about in your essay, for me, kind of ends up being, well, you know what, I wrote about this in my essay. This is what I said I was going to do. So I'm going to go do it. So I think don't just use all that time and energy to apply, but also use that time and energy to kind of think through what your next step is.
Yeah.
I think that's all that advice is spot on. And the only thing I'd add is start reaching out to a few people. There are some people I didn't want to reach out to because they're people I might want to interview with and intern with, and I didn't want to sort of show my lack of knowledge at the beginning, but there are a lot of other people, very much including current students and recent graduates from the joint degree program or from either school, and just begin kind of talking to them. I think particularly if you start at SOM, it can be disorienting in the sense that recruitment starts almost immediately, and people very quickly sort of begin going towards investment banking or consulting or tech or other fields. And I think one comment I've heard from a lot of classmates is it can be very easy to sort of be swept up in that momentum and end up doing something that's actually not a great fit. And I think taking that time to soul search, as Caroline and Alex said, and talk to a few people beforehand can kind of help you think through that more rigorously, so you come in with kind of a clearer sense of what you want to do.
And it's such good advice, too, in terms of the application process of, like, write something that's authentic and meaningful to you that you want to read 15 years from now. Right? I think that, like, if you're writing it and you're thinking about it and it's a meaningful dot on the horizon for you, then it may not be the one you end up at, but it's a path. And it's one that really is good data on yourself, because how many times in your life do you just have to sit and think about where you really want to end up? Like, most people, that feel self-indulgent, right? But at this moment, it's required, so you can use it really well. One of the things that folks look at from the outside consistently, and they go, like a business school and a school of the environment. Like, every leader or person who's passionate about the environment going to this school, and people from all different sectors and areas and different industries coming to the School of Management. Like, what's the experience of integrating in both student bodies for somebody who is kind of in both communities and moving between them?
Yeah, I think it's really kind of a dynamic experience where you are. I think the proximity of the two schools is really kind of, whether intended, designed that way or not, but it's, within a couple minutes I can be not in a different world, but in kind of in just a different space, but it's only, across the street essentially. And the how well the school is integrated, I think you're starting to see a lot of classes, whether it's corporate finance or, at the business school, incorporating things kind of that they teach at the forestry school and vice versa. So I think it's really cool. Sometimes you almost forget where you are. Like, you'll be in the forestry school, this feels a lot like a business class, or you'll be over here at the business school, this feels like a lot like a forestry class. So I think it's pretty cool how well they're integrated. But the communities, I think they're unique in a sense, but I think very compatible.
Cool. Great. Do you Do you have any advice for people like who don't have a background in one or the other? Like, Jonathan, you were saying you didn't have a background in management, then you're applying to a business school. You have a deep background on the environment or conservation. You're applying to a business school. Alex, you're from a management side applying to an environment school. Like, when you think about, like, people are always concerned that I'm not a complete applicant. Like, I'm not a complete person because I don't have experience at both. Like, how did you navigate that in the application process?
Yeah, I think for me, I tried to show why I felt like I needed both degrees. So I don't really think that like the School of Management has a huge preference for people with management experience. I mean, you're coming to school to learn that,
Right.
and so many of our classmates don't necessarily have a business background. I mean, I did try to highlight like the business background that I had just because I felt like that might help, but I didn't have very much. And I think that showing them that you're interested, that you think you need it, and that you're capable of doing the work. So like maybe taking a quant class or something is probably what you need to do.
Good.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I think, I imagine if you talk to an admissions officer at either school, they tell you that if you were a perfect package, why would you come back to school? I mean, if you already know this stuff.
Right.
So they expect and want people who are looking to learn in both fields, and that can be to varying degrees. And so for SOM, I don't have a business background or a finance background, but I was in a management role in my last job, and I wrote about how I learned what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, what strengths and weaknesses I wanted to kind of work on. And to Caroline's point, without much of a quantitative background, I did take a stats class at night a couple years ago before applying, and I found it hugely valuable. I'm not sure if it was 100% necessary in terms of admissions. Definitely don't think it hurt. It showed that I was interested and that I could handle it. And it's certainly made taking stats and probability in the core that much more passable.
Yeah. And it also helps 10 years out to be like kicking the tires on, do I want to go back into education? Oh, right, no, I really, this feels good to me again.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on this, Alex?
Yeah, so like, kind of in terms of, coming from the military, like a lot of leadership kind of training, but nothing specific to business or the environment. But something that I always recall, something actually that my dad tells me is, you're not where you are because of what you've done, but because of what you will do. And that's something that has, every day I kind of think of that. And during the application process, I remember that a lot and tried to incorporate that into what I said I was going to do. So that was kind of my approach.
Cool. Well, we're the two folks here on either end have a class that starts at 1 p.m., so we need to get them out in just a little bit. I want to give folks just an opportunity to offer a few final words of wisdom to the crew online or encouragement. This is, as I mentioned, the largest 3-year program on campus. There's usually about 45 students in the program, kind of 15 per class around there. The students, have specializations and activities ranging from the kind of clean tech focus to people who are really interested in nonprofit management to conservation finance to folks who want to go into corporate sustainability roles internally to people who are really interested in politics or public policy and want to apply some of these lessons there. So a wide range of perspectives inside the community and pathways through the program, which I hope you've learned more about today. But what would you want folks to take away and kind of think about as they're still considering this degree? And maybe we'll start with Caroline right at the first part, or your face tells me you want to start. No.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say apply for the joint degree. Just the community, like you said, there are so many different avenues, places that you can go from the joint degree, places that people have come from to the joint degree. You really just have amazing conversations and just think about why the joint degree is right for you. Like Jonathan said, for some people, just taking a couple classes at other school might be enough. For me, I think taking the cores at both schools is going to be really valuable and something that you really can't do if you're not a joint degree. So yeah, do that self-reflection and figure out why this is for you, and then put it in your application.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd echo that for sure. Again, I think I got caught up a bit when I was thinking about the joint degree program for that opportunity cost for that third year. I was already working, I was earning a salary, and it's tough. But I'm really glad that I thought about it also in terms of opportunity value. And it's just been huge. I mean, it's been really huge for me. 2 years does kind of fly by, and I'm seeing this with classmates at FES who are, frankly, not that far away from graduating, 12 months in. And again, that may be the right decision for many people. I think for me, that third year is going to provide incredible value. And already the second year in the core is providing incredible value. And kind of going back to something Alex said earlier about crashing on joint degree couches, I mean, these are professional schools, these are professional programs. The joint degree community, we're all here because we're looking to work in certain fields. It's also just an incredibly warm, incredibly friendly community. And there's some real tight bonds that are built through dinners, through weekends in the forest. And it's really valuable to be able to go to talk to somebody, particularly current students, but even with alumni, where you're not just having a professional conversation, you've also got kind of a shared link. Like either you've hung out in the forest with them and, done bird owl calls at midnight, or even if you didn't do it with them, they know what you're talking about, and they've been there as well. And that kind of builds an immediate bond that goes beyond just the transactional, professional side, where you can really connect on a different level and get a bit more kind of value out of the conversations with them, a bit deeper. And I think that's been powerful. The last thing I'd say is I remember stressing out a lot during the application process. What if I'm not the right candidate? What if? And I think just focusing on what you can control. There's a lot. All of these application processes, they get many more students that are qualified than they can take. There's a lot out of your control. But for me, that was focusing on the math portion of the GRE in my case. It was focusing on thinking about why I wanted to come back to school and kind of honing that narrative, both for myself as well as for the admissions office. And then the last thing I'd say that was really valuable, and I wish I'd done even more of, was speaking to current students in the joint degree, at FES, at SOM, who had similar backgrounds, similar goals. I'm happy to talk to anyone, and I imagine all three of us are. And also just come and visit. I wish I had visited sooner and more often, actually, during the application process.
Great, and you'll see Jonathan's email up on the slide right now, so you should reach out to him and go talk to him, because he's one of our admissions ambassadors, along with Caroline. 30 seconds, Alex. Alex, take us home.
Yeah, I think life is short. I think this is an incredible opportunity to do something really extraordinary and to meet some of the world's finest and smartest and people who really want to make an impact. So I think it's a really special place to be. And as you mentioned, this family it's incredible, and I can't say enough about it. And I think doing something on a webinar is, I hope you get an introduction to kind of who we are and what this is about. But I hope you come on campus. I hope you reach out. Give me, reach out, give me a call. Come to campus. I'll have, we can have coffee, and hopefully then you can really see and feel the things we're talking about. So
cool.
Good luck.
Thank you. Well, thanks, team. Really appreciate you all taking the time out of your day today. I know you're busy and you're going to go to class right now. Signing off from New Haven, Connecticut. Come see us soon. It's beautiful out right now. Chamber of Commerce Day. Sun is shining, blue skies. Leaves are just about to turn. It's going to be nice. We'll see y'all.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.